What the George Zimmerman decision means for North America, that is the subject of tonight's byline. On Saturday evening, a 6-person jury out of Florida found George Zimmerman not guilty of charges related to his killing of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin. Opinion polls show Americans and Canadians are divided on whether they agree with this, which is interesting. Not so much that it's divided, but that they even have the opinion to begin with. Now, the unfortunate event occurred on February 26, 2012. But the prosecutor didn't file charges until April 11th. Well, why the month-and-a-half gap? Because the prosecutor was caving to political pressure. This case was a flashpoint of public opinion, not so much because of the elements the story contained, but because of the elements it lacked. There was enough missing in this that the public could project what they wanted to onto it. Basically, two guys came into contact. Both seemed to have misinterpreted the situation as being of greater volatility than it was. Somehow they went at each other and one of them died. We got one eyewitness saying he saw someone who looked like Trayvon on top of a guy who looked like Zimmerman. And that's about it. As for the rest of the narrative, it's a his word over his word story. Zimmerman's the only one living, and the jury went, well, they didn't so much go with his side of the story. Their verdict just says the prosecution couldn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Zimmerman was not simply acting in self-defense, which is, of course, what Zimmerman maintained to begin with and all along. Oh, but that's not enough for some people out there, as the protests across America right now show. Some people, they don't think this was a trial. They think this was a referendum on, say, whether black youth are unfairly targeted in society. Some thought maybe it was a referendum on Florida's Stand Your Ground law. That's not what the trial was. The trial was whether or not these 6 people felt comfortable locking this guy up, saying with near certainty that Zimmerman wasn't just acting in self-defense. And they couldn't say it. Looking at the facts, neither can I. If there's a security camera tape covering the whole thing, multiple eyewitnesses, then we'd have consistent, objective observers. But we don't. We've got the one eyewitness, a 911 tape, Martin's sassy friend, Rachel Chantel. For a prosecutor, hey, it's a tough assembly of facts to put a guy away with. That's what the defense argued, and the jury agreed. Like I said before, it's because of how few facts we have that the public is able to make the case about whatever they want. They project their own views of society into this situation. This is different than, say, the Rodney King case. Despite what the likes of Jesse Jackson might say, this is different than a civil rights matter. There is no smoking gun in this sad combination of events that left a teenage boy dead. But here's Jackson on CNN over the weekend overreacting to the verdict.
The Department of Justice must intervene and take this case, frankly, to another level.
No. He's confusing political capital, of which there is clearly a great deal here, with a compelling body of evidence, which the prosecution did not have. Look, perhaps Martin's family will do well in civil court. There may be some settlement out of that. Fine, continue with that. On Sunday, though, President Obama spoke out, offering words to Martin's family and a political statement on gun violence. Why is the president even commenting on such a matter? His office is removed from such state judicial concerns, no matter how much the national public is gripped by them. However, that's what this case has taught us, that people, they just don't get the legal process. Even the president, who is himself a lawyer. It's not about public sentiment or broad trends or social issues. It's about the facts on hand. Maybe Zimmerman did start the fight. I don't know. Maybe some jurors even thought there was a good chance he did. But the jury couldn't claim that beyond reasonable doubt. And that's the byline.
In the Circuit Court of the 18th Judicial Circuit in and for Seminole County, Florida, State of Florida versus George Zimmerman. Verdict: we, the jury, find George Zimmerman not guilty.
And now for more reaction on this top story of the day, we go to author and columnist, Byline regular commentator Ben Shapiro out of LA. Ben, what to you was the most interesting response coming out of this whole thing?
Well, the media has been the progenitor of this entire case from the very beginning, and the media is kind of bemoaning of Zimmerman's acquittal. Just goes to show that the media was really invested in him being convicted. From the very beginning, the media not only didn't tell the story right, the media simply lied about what happened in the facts on the ground. They did it in an open attempt to portray America more generally as a broadly racist place. President Obama jumped in on that same wavelength when he said that Trayvon Martin looked like his son if he had had a son. I mean, the whole idea behind all of this is that America is the sort of place where black people are routinely stalked by white people. Police departments routinely let white people off for stalking black people. And all of this ignores all of the problems that really are suffered by the black community, including lack of education, poverty, tremendous rates of crime. 49% of all the people killed in the United States are black men, and 93% of those black men are killed by other black men. But you don't see President Obama or the media covering that. All you see is the tremendously outsized focus on one case of a Hispanic guy killing a black guy, presumably in self-defense.
Okay, so in my monologue, I'm saying huge disconnect between public narrative and just the facts of the case. Ben, how do we get to that? How does that happen even in the public psyche, where that's something that we want, that people invite?
Well, the media lies about it. I mean, the media has a case to make here. They have an axe to grind. If America is a deeply racist place, then a massive government is necessary in order to correct all of those racial woes. And this is what the media has been doing since the start. The reason that there's so much controversy associated with this case is because people know so many things that just ain't so. The fact is that George Zimmerman is not a white guy. He's a Hispanic guy. The fact is that George Zimmerman never used any racial slurs on the phone. The fact is that all of the evidence tends to show that Trayvon Martin started the fight with George Zimmerman. The facts tend to show that George Zimmerman was injured, even though the media said that he was not injured. The facts tend to show that the media lied routinely about the motives and the nature of what was going on behind this case. I mean, the American public didn't even want to see the fact that Trayvon Martin, for example, had a history of fighting. The jurors acquitted George Zimmerman in the absence of presentation of what was really effective evidence on behalf of the defense that Trayvon Martin had a history of fighting. So people wanted to hear what they wanted to hear in this trial. There's a lot of the black community that feels that the criminal justice system in the United States is biased against black people. 84% of black people in the United States feel that the criminal justice system is biased against black people. The media stirs that pot for ratings, for cash, and for political considerations, and President Obama joined in for the same reasons.
Ben, in 2008, we were told we are on the cusp of a post-racial society. I like that idea because I'm tired of stories being racialized for no reason. I was born in the early 80s, urban environment. We were all different colors. Nobody cares. Nobody cares when you're kids. Most younger generations, they just don't care about this stuff. But to me, it seems like it's not post-racial. In fact, it's gotten worse with people racializing these situations. Why is this happening? Why can't we let these things go?
Well, I think that the left can't let a lot of these things go because the minute it lets these things go and says that people ought to be treated based on their behavior, not on the color of their skin, that removes a lot of the incentive for government interventionism. The fact is that the same rationale behind so much of this outcry about George Zimmerman was the same rationale behind the outcry about a Supreme Court case a few weeks ago in which the Supreme Court said, look, things have progressed a little bit since the 1950s, and therefore we can strike down part of the Voting Rights Act. The left said, no, this is crazy. America's still a racist, horrible place. That is a hallmark of leftist thought. And there are a lot of people, white and black and Latino and of all races, who feel an unearned sense of moral superiority in calling their neighbors racist. And unfortunately, that has become the kind of predominant mode of thought in large segments of the United States.
Ben, one last question. I'm going to read President Obama's statements, and then I'm going to get your reaction from that. We're just going to put that up on the screen right now. President Obama said, "The death of Trayvon Martin was a tragedy not just for his family or for any one community, but for America. We should ask ourselves if we're doing all we can to stem the tide of gun violence that claims too many lives across this country on a daily basis. We should ask ourselves as individuals and as a society how we can prevent future tragedies like this as citizens. It's a job for all of us. That's the way to honor Trayvon Martin." What do you think about that, Ben?
President Obama is a hypocrite and a liar. He doesn't give a damn about the 6,600 black people killed across this country every year. Just this weekend, on Thursday, the Chicago police discovered the body of a kid named Darrell Green, 17 years old. He was so badly decomposed that they couldn't tell whether he'd been bludgeoned to death or shot. Turns out he'd been shot. His family said he'd been shot for refusing to join a gang at school. You've never heard of Darrell Green. President Obama has never heard of Darrell Green because President Obama doesn't care about Darrell Green. Neither does the mainstream media in the United States. All they care about is continuing to portray white Americans as vastly racist so that they can push the narrative that America is a racist place requiring some sort of racial backlash.
This is a very sad situation you've set up, but I think there's definitely some truth to it. Thanks for joining us, as always, Ben. Folks, that's Ben Shapiro, author and columnist out of LA. Send me your thoughts on this Zimmerman trial. Lots of opinions. Everyone's got them. I know you do too. Anthony.Furey at sunmedia.ca.